Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Tactical Fly Fisher fly tank tutorial. I'm your host, Devin Olson, owner of Tactical Fly Fisher. Today, we're going to do the second to last tutorial from my World Fly Fishing Championship series of patterns. Today is going to be a really popular Perdigon, and this is the Gasolina Perdigon. And this is probably, if not the most popular Perdigon, it's definitely one of the most popular Perdigons in Spain and across Europe. And as the name might suggest, the Gasolina is supposed to look like a gasoline, smear of gasoline in a puddle. So if you were to go to a gas station and look down and there was a little spill there, you'd see that oily sheen on top of a little bit of gas. That is what the surface of a Gasolina Perdigon is supposed to look like. So they tend to be, everybody has a different idea of what is the right Gasolina color. I've seen Gasolina colors everywhere from brownish to olive to black, but with that little bit of iridescent sheen on them. And it turns out when I first started tying light bright Perdigons and I was tying a black version with a little bit of green sheen, I was pretty much tying a Gasolina Perdigon, even though I hadn't seen them myself yet. So it's a really good pattern. It's a pattern that I had on probably most of the time when I was in Spain at the World Championship this year. It's a great pattern to kind of combine with a drab fly on the rig as well. It's got a little bit of flash, just not overly flashy, but does have some sheen, and especially if you put a hot spot on it, would pop even more in the water. But you can combine it with a drab pattern and see which the trout prefer on the day. When it comes to tying Gasolinas, you can pick from a wide array of materials. The easiest one is probably to just pick some sort of crystal flash, which we have a couple of options for that. Or you can use a flashback sheet that you then cut with rollers. So I have a rolling cutter with a ruler and then a cutting pad that I cut strips. And you can use that not only to make flashbacks for other nymphs, but then if you cut the strip really thin, it works well for Perdigons as well. It's certainly easier to cut off that flashback strip than it is with scissors. I've used to use scissors in the past and I got some awfully wonky shapes in my flashback strips that I was using for Perdigons then. You can pick up a roller and a cutting board and ruler pretty cheaply online, and it's a good thing to add to your tying kit if you do want to play with flashback strips, both for Perdigons or just for flashbacks. The other material option we have is pre-cut strips, so Perdigon Mania strips, those are good options as well. I would say from a toughness standpoint, the Perdigon Mania strips, you do have to be careful about how much you pull on them when you tie the Perdigon. Once they're buried under resin, it's fine, but they do kind of break easily. And some of the flashback sheets that are a little bit thinner, like the Troutline ones or the Seaby versions, they're similar, if not the same material as the Perdigon Mania strips that are pre-cut. So you just have to be a little bit gentle when you apply pressure as you wrap the fly. The hairline flashbacks strips, once you cut them, that's a pretty strong material compared to some of the other flashback sheets. So that one you can put a little bit of pressure on. And then, crystal flash is crystal flash. Most of you have experience with that. One last option for a body material would be the Magic Tinsel from Techstream. When you tie that in, it is a little thicker than some of the other materials, so it's not as good for really small versions of this fly, but it's fine if you have a size 18 or 16 or larger. And you can stretch that material, but when you go to use it, I would tell you not to stretch it because it actually changes the exterior sheen. Also, lastly, when it comes to the flashback sheets, most of them have a dull side and a flashy bright side. So make sure you tie in the correct side that you want. If you want the flashy side, you tend to need to actually have the dull side facing up or away from the fly. And then when you make that initial wrap, it'll fold over and the shiny side will be on the outside. So without too much further ado, let's tie the Gasolina Perdigon, a fly that you should definitely add to your nymphing box. It's a great all-around pattern. It's fairly imitative, but also a little bit flashy, and it's a nice recipe for a little bit of both attractive qualities. Let's get tying. All right, let's get going tying this Gasolina Perdigon. So here is a version that I've tied. This specific one has a trout line flashback, brown, I believe, as the body material. We also have another one here that I've tied that has medium brown crystal flash from Hairline as the body material. You'll notice this one's a little bit lighter and kind of more green in coloration. Also, this one has dark tan thread underneath, whereas the previous one that I had has dark brown. So you can see that by varying either the material itself or also the thread that you put underneath, that you'll get some different shade effects. Maybe you've got a local mayfly that's, you know, lighter or darker, and you kind of want to more or less match the color but still keep it flashy. Well, that's one way you can do it. So for this one, I'll tie with even a different material. This one we'll do a Riberfly crystal flash strand. This one's going to be a little bit darker than the Hairline crystal flash is. Okay, so I have a Fulling Mill Jig Force short hook in here. This is their labeled size 22, which is actually probably closer to an 18. One of the previous ones I showed you in here. This one right here, this was the one with the trout line flashback, and that's their size 20, which is closer to a 16 or a 17. This has a 2.3 millimeter slotted tungsten bead on it. And, you know, I tie this fly in the full range of tungsten beads because it's a fly I use a lot. So I'll tie it up to maybe the Fulling Mills size 18, I suppose, which is closer to a 14 in this specific hook. And then I'll tie it all the way down to as small as it gets with either this 2.3 millimeter bead or a 2.0. So I've got a cocktail feather here. I just broke 3 fibers off of it. I'm going to measure for length. I want it about the length of the hook shank, so right about there. Transfer those fibers to my left thumb and index finger and pinch, and then I put the thread between them. Let that hang there kind of while I make one revolution around the hook shank and then come back up. I haven't put tension on it yet. I'm going to right now. And that pinch wrap will lock the fibers in line with the hook shank, so the tail's nice and straight. Then from here, it's a pretty darn easy fly. I'm just gonna take a single strand of the crystal flash, come right behind the bead, and tie it in with 2 loose wraps, and then maybe a third, and just pull that crystal flash under your thread wraps. Then you don't have to get in there and trim it. Then I'm just going to fill in some valleys in the thread on the body. I want just a little bit of a taper. You don't need much of one. What you don't want is a reverse taper so that it looks like a mayfly that's a little thicker downstairs than it is upstairs in the chest, or the thorax in this case. And then we're going to go ahead and switch to fluorescent orange 16-aught Vivus for a hotspot here. I carry both the hotspot and non-hot spot versions in my boxes, but I probably fish the hotspot version more often than I do those without. Once you've changed your thread, go ahead and whip finish. And the reason why I changed the thread then is that if I have a little tuft of thread from one of those, either the brown or the orange, that doesn't get trimmed flush, it's going to get covered by the crystal flash, so it won't be hanging out and making a bump in the resin at the end. All right, now I'm just going to use the rotary function on this Stanfo vise. Wrap a little bit, just kind of touching turns. Until I get to the front. Try and get that crystal flash nicked off exactly flush with the thread. And then make a 3 or 4 turn whip finish here. And when you're tying a tinsel bodied Perdigon like this, or any Perdigon, as you're making your whip finish, I like to put my finger on top of it here. That will keep the thread from sliding on that move right there. Sometimes when you pop it out of the bottom of your whip finisher here, the thread will slide back along the body and you'll get like wraps of thread that go mid shank on your hook, and it's really annoying. So if you stick your finger on top of the fly while you close that whip finish, that'll keep that from happening. Okay, now I have some black resin, and I normally just kind of get my light turned on so that it's ready to go. And I'm gonna hit 1 drop. The first drop's probably gonna go into the recess of the bead. Actually, you know what? That one is pretty darn good. I might just do a tiny little bit more. And actually, once I hit that fly with the UV light, it showed me I had a couple little strands of the fluorescent orange thread that had frayed there, so I trimmed those off. Yeah, I'm going to do just a tiny little more of that black resin. And I get asked a lot why I'm putting the wing case on the top if this is a jig hook, and I wrote a blog on that a couple years ago. For those of you who haven't read it, I think it's called Wing Cases and Shellbacks, to invert or not to invert. That is the question. So if you Google that, you can probably find it, or just search back on our blog. Now I've got some clear UV craft resin. Whenever I'm doing Perdigons, as I pull the brush out, I always wipe the inside of the brush on the inside of the bottle to try and get excess off, so that you don't just cover your Perdigon in a giant thick glob of resin. All right. Touch the extra to the shaft, hit it, and we're done. It's really, like most tinsel-bodied Perdigons, the Gasolina is really simple and quick to tie. You can match any local variations in insect colors that you have by kind of varying the body material or the thread, like I talked about. So give it a try. Whip a few up and let me know how they work on your local water, because it's been a good pattern for me pretty much across the planet, but I'm always interested to hear how well it does or doesn't do on local waters wherever you're at. Thanks for watching this tactical fly fisher fly tying tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and that you add a few Gasolina Perdigons to your box. If you need the materials for this fly, we have a fly pattern category on our shop with all our tutorial flies that we've done recently, and you can click on that category and get all the materials in there. We'll also have this in a blog where you can click directly to the materials, so you can find any of those on tacticalflyfisher.com. And we'll have anything else that you need for your fly tying or fly fishing adventures there as well. Please subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell icon so you get a notification when we post new videos, and feel free to share it with your friends. We hope you're having fun, whether at the Vice or on the river this winter. Stay safe, stay warm, and have fun. See you in the next one.